I'm here today to talk about the end of the world. People are going crazy, spending thousands of dollars buying food and building arks and everything. Me, I'm going to be living in a cave with Maria, and then we're going to drink some beer, smoke some cigars, we're going to pump irons, and then we're going to make iron babies. If you don't know what iron babies are, when they come out of the womb, pretty much what happens is you feed the baby with some muscle milk, and then when you feed them with the muscle milk, they will come out to be strong as you. So then when they're 1 year old, you'd be like, here's a dumbbell, here's a 5-pounder. And then when they lift the 5-pounder, they start lifting the 10-pounder. And they just keep going. So every year, they'll start lifting. So when they're like 20 years old or something, they could be lifting 400 pounds. It's crazy. They become stronger, then they start entering into Mr. Olympia, and then they need to show the pecs, the arms, the legs, and everything. They need to show the outline of their stomach so they can show the actual six-pack.
Really?
Yes.
Dude, that sounds like some insightful information.
You know, you need to start drinking the muscle milk and start pumping the irons, because I can see that you're very lean. So if you start drinking the muscle milk and then pump the irons, taking your calcium, the potassium, I guarantee you would be like me.
Oh man, well I might do that. That sounds good.
When I came from Austria, Germany to here to America, you know, I started drinking a lot of milk, and milk actually works out for you. And it with all the stuff that's coming out, the skim milk, the low-fat milk, no. I go into a deli, or maybe if I go into the gym, and if they don't give me the muscle milk, I get pissed off and I start lifting some weight somewhere else. Check out my new movie. It's called The Last Stand. Basically play a sheriff in town, and these people are coming to my town, so I'm trying to stop them from ruining my town. So it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a big smash box office hit movie. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be very amazing. It's gonna be that amazing. Okay, in Terminator 2, in Judgment Day with James Cameron, you know, he directed the movie, and I come out to save the little boy, and the little boy was crying like a little bitch, and I was like, just stop it. I'm from the future, damn it, and I'm trying to save you. That's the kind of movie it's going to be. People are going to be, their minds are going to be blown. It's going to be amazing.
No, in all honesty, Matt, where can people find you? What's your YouTube handle?
It's youtube.com/Matthew127. In a world where one man, one dog, making a podcast, people will die. Starring Bobby Pickles, Matt Fernandez, and Matt Stone at the 180degreehealth.com. Was that good?
Yeah, that was good. Might be able to use that.
Bobby Pickles podcast. He always says, that's me. With that look on his face, he'll talk about anything. Tattoos, t-shirts, politics, history, and hot sauce on everything. Bobby Pickles. Pop culture, documentaries, conspiracy theories, sarcasm, and beer. It's a conversation, start listening, cause we're all here. Bobby Pickles podcast. That's me.
Hey, Bobby, what's going on?
Hey, Matt Stone, how are you? Thank you so much for being on the Bobby Pickles podcast. I really appreciate it. Listen, I have another person in the studio today, just so you know. Buddy, he's kind of helping me out. His name's Matt as well. So, you know, if you hear the name Matt uttered by me and then a bunch of expletives right afterwards, that's not directed towards you.
I can keep that straight. Well, hey, you just started your show pretty recently, it looks like, huh?
Yeah, I did.
Start? Cool. Well, good luck with it.
Thank you so much. I did just start the show pretty recently. However, I've been getting a lot of good feedback on it, and I like to have unconventional people on. And it seemed like you fit the bill a little bit. I don't know. I hope you're not offended by that. What exactly is 180-degree health?
180-degree health makes it different, that distinguishes it. What I started doing, I have a background as a writer, and I picked a good research topic, something I've always been really, really interested in and really passionate about. I dove in full throttle and started researching it full time, as much as I could, writing a blog, detailing and journaling all my findings, and eventually led to the start of 180-degree health, which was sort of the contrarian health website. I would say my specialty over the years is sort of becoming how to help people who tried to get really healthy that ended up getting really unhealthy, trying to get really healthy to get really healthy again. I mean, there's obviously a lot of health websites, health ideologies, books, all different kinds of things out there, and actually some people take them way, way, way too far. like I said, my background is as a writer.
Do you have a degree in English or something?
Yeah, I have a degree in English creative writing.
Actually, I do too. We both share that same thing. I have a degree in English from the University of Florida.
Yeah, I saw the BA in English. I also saw that you said that Florida was the worst state in the union, which I thought was pretty funny, as I am a Florida resident. But
right
not
now?
currently in Florida, and I'm not from Florida. Not offended by that in any way.
Mr. Stone, we have to get on that topic right now that you brought up because I've wanted to talk about that so much. I really do feel like Florida is the worst state in the entire union. Because, and I'll tell you why I feel that way. Number one, the completely conservative viewpoints. It's weird, the regions of Florida, right? Like you have South Florida. That area seems to be somewhat liberal-minded. Those are usually the only counties that go Democratic in any kind of elections. And maybe Alachua County, where University of Florida is. But then the rest of the state is really conservative, and it's very like Southern feel to it, right?
Right.
And even though it's very conservative, they're very liberal in the way they dish out Oxycontins like candy. That's what I just despise. Right?
Liberal in terms of their liberal use of pharmaceuticals. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're liberal in that sense, and in the fact that they dish it out to everybody. All you need is like an MRI. And you can go down there and they'll just give you so much Oxycontins. Like I read like 85% of the prescriptions for Oxycontins written in the entire country come from the state of Florida. It's pretty disgusting. And
yeah, absolutely.
The governor, Rick Scott, turned down all that money to build the railway from Tampa to Orlando down to Miami. That would have opened up the whole state, I feel like, and he just turned that right away. It's the worst economy in the country, the worst housing market in the country right now. But all of those things contribute equally to my despising Florida. And I feel like everybody... I hope I don't offend you right now, but my uncle used to always say to me, he said, everybody ruins their lives wherever they are from, and then they go back to Florida and they try to start anew. Now, you said you're not from Florida originally?
Yeah, I'm not from Florida originally. I went down there to be close to my grandfather, of course. It's where, most people end up in Florida, I think, visiting grandparents and whatnot. I mean, I moved to Florida as an opportunist, really, because I make a living on the internet, so I'm actually positively influenced by the fact that the housing market has crashed because I get cheap rent by the beach. I don't have to enter the workforce there in any way, so I'm completely removed from all of that. So nice weather, low prices, so I was able to overlook a few of the things that you're
So where do you come from?
Take advantage of that. Well, I've had a habit of moving around all over the place. I spent a lot of my growing up in my later years after age 16 in Colorado. And I ended up doing a lot of seasonal work. So I worked as a wilderness ranger for a while. I worked in restaurants. And I just got in the habit of moving around. So I lived in Hawaii and Colorado and Wyoming and California. And I originally grew up in Nashville, Tennessee.
Do you believe travel, again, I read somewhere that there's basically two types of people. And there's the person that spends their money on material things, and then the person that spends their money on travel more and trying to have those life experiences. I guess, do you find yourself more in that kind of person?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely find freedom to be a great currency, and it's not just the money itself anymore that defines wealth. It's the ability to have the mobility and flexibility to use it. And I definitely really enjoy new experiences, and I find that the greatest discomfort for me is being too comfortable. I do like making sure to see new things, new people, new places, regularly, just to have a broad variety of experiences in my life. I can't handle just doing the same thing over and over again every day in the same place for 40, 50 years.
To each his own. I could spend 40, 50 years in New York City any lifetime. I love this place. This is the best place on earth, in my opinion. So getting back to how you got into it, you had a background in writing, but what got you into writing about health specifically?
It's just one of those things that's always been a curiosity to me. And I think a lot of people do have certain things that they're just naturally more curious about than others for reasons that are often inexplicable. I mean, if I had to come up with the best reason that I've naturally been interested in it, I would say it was probably the health problems that I had as a kid. I was always going to doctors and receiving various medications and treatments and surgeries and all different kinds of things for my health problems. That didn't really do anything for me. So I was pretty skeptical, and I just had a real strong desire to figure out a way to get my body to deal with its own problems. I took that attitude into things, researched really heavily and really hard, and found some neat stuff and started writing about it. And, the rest is history, I guess.
What kind of health problems were you experiencing? I mean, not to get too personal or anything.
Well, just really bad asthma, had appendicitis, had my appendix removed when I was 6. my tonsils taken out when I was 5. I had really bad sinus infections and a lot of respiratory problems and ear infections and problems that aren't totally atypical, but they're certainly things that, I've missed 20 days of school a year at least because I was just sick all the time. I didn't feel well. I was overweight as a kid, really bad eyesight, horrible teeth, cavities all over the place. Just certain things that I later discovered weren't something that everybody had to live with, even though it's normal to have those things these days. It's not necessarily something that is a sign of good health, and it is something that people as a society can probably make a lot of progress in preventing and overcoming. I guess that's probably my true inspiration, but I've always had that health nerd passion about me.
That's an interesting term, health nerd. I haven't really heard that. That's how you consider yourself, I guess. Yeah, my friend Matt here, he's a nerd in other ways. He's a nerd with like video games and all these other things, right, Matt?
Yes.
But definitely not a nerd in health. And actually, Matt, I'm not trying to exploit you or whatever or anything like that, but you're a big guy, right?
Definitely, yeah.
How much do you weigh, Matt?
I could say probably like 300.
Really?
Well,
Jesus Christ.
I haven't really like, checked my weight lately. I've been going to the gym.
Yeah.
So I've been going to the gym for like a good 6 months. I'm trying to be healthy.
So do you have anything that you can like tell my friend Matt here that what he can do to try to get better and try to lose some weight and stuff?
That's a good thing to bring up because, I could tell you a little bit about the real research behind obesity and weight problems. And, we could talk a little bit about that and why I have kind of a 180-degree approach to it.
Let's talk about it. How'd you come up with the name? What's that mean for you?
The name was just the fact that I felt like all the general advice and what people generally believe just to be the status quo of health and nutrition information was pretty much an exact opposite of what I thought was more accurate and more useful and more effective. Secondly, you see a lot of health trends moving in the wrong direction, and I felt the 180 degree was sort of a symbol of us calling for a turnaround in some of those trends. So that's the dual meaning of the 180 degree health and why I came up with that name.
What exactly does it entail though? Like if I was going to subscribe to this 180 degree health and I wanted to, I wanted to try to get in good health, what's the basis of 180 degree health?
The site in general is an exploration into the world of health. As you know, for every 10 people who are telling you to cut carbs out of your diet, there's 10 other people telling you to cut fats out of your diet and eat more carbs to achieve the same things. You have all different kinds of opposing viewpoints out there on every little tiny thing. Everybody's in there nitpicking the fine details and arguing about them all over the internet as to what people should eat, what people should do, what is causing obesity, what is causing us to have increases in diabetes or asthma or things like that. And there's not a whole lot of agreement. So I took it on sort of from a journalistic point of view, but not just strictly journalistic, but certainly looking at it as an exploration. I would say that my website is keeping people up to speed and up to date with my current conclusions. I'm going on 7 years now of really fully immersing myself into all this research and all the different ideologies out there. There's no way to sum up my site and say, do this, don't do that. In fact, I think one of the conclusions I've come to is that intellectualizing every little detail of your diet can be a huge health liability, and people are forcing themselves to not eat when they're hungry. They're forcing themselves to drink 8-ounce glasses of water a day when they're not thirsty. They're forcing themselves to do a bunch of unwanted exercise. There's a lot of different things that we're doing that's potentially causing problems. I think all this health fanaticism in the world today is one of the biggest liabilities. It's not really helping us. So it's hard to say that 180-degree health is defined as one thing because it's sort of always changing. I do research and find interesting things and write articles about them, and sometimes it involves studies, sometimes it involves a review of a certain book, any number of different things.
You bring up one point I want to make really fast. You were just talking about cutting stuff out of your diet. I recently spoke with a Dr. Daniel Toogood a couple episodes ago, and he is a doctor of chiropractic medicine out in California, and he wrote a book called Chronic Pain Gone 90 Days. And he says that if you do like a blanket approach where you basically just cut out all the dairy, like primarily milk. He says like milk is like the worst thing for you, and that humans really shouldn't consume milk after they're little babies, basically, from their mother. And we're the only species that consumes other different species' milk. And so he says cutting out dairy, and if you cut out gluten and MSG, any canned soups or canned products and stuff, if you cut all that out, after like 90 days, all your chronic pain will be gone. What do you think about that?
There's certainly some people that report benefits in any number of different dietary approaches. So you might see that claim being made from vegans You might see that claim being made from people doing the paleo diet, which sounds like that's a pretty close version of. I know one pain doctor who just gives people thyroid medication and claims it disappears their pain. There's a lot of different people claiming the same types of results with certain types of things. Some of it's valid and some of it's a little bit overhyped. Some of it is short-term benefit that doesn't last. There's a lot of stuff out there, but again, that's kind of what I look at. I look at what everybody's saying all across the board, and I certainly have come to the conclusion after all these years that the amount of hype out there is incredible. I mean, if these diets work the way that all the doctors and all these other people believe that it does, we wouldn't have any health problems left. But I have, 37,000 comments on my site. It's a real testament to the ineffectiveness of a lot of these different approaches and a lot of different, just logic sort of breaks down when you see, oh yeah, it makes sense. If you spend time in any one line of thinking long enough, it starts to make sense. So if you were to look at the vegan diet or, a fruitarian diet specifically, all of the other primate species eat a fruit-based diet. You can start to look at logic like that. It starts to make sense that maybe we should be eating mostly fruit too. And then you look at the paleo diet and you see, well, our ancestors were eating a lot of meat and we were hunting big game animals up in the high latitudes. And it looks like we're eating mostly meat and bone marrow and all these different kinds of things. And that logic starts to make a lot of sense.
But then as evolution kicks in, right? And then we kind of evolve to whatever we're eating, and kind of get used to eating this like corn syrup based crap that we eat in the United States, like the fast food and everything like that. And maybe we would evolve to actually, our bodies would work with that.
Well, we are radically adaptable species. And we do know that evolutionary-wise and even genetically, we've changed a lot over the last 10,000 years since the dawn of the agricultural revolution. I mean, we've developed the production of lactase beyond our youth. What we see is we've actually evolved and adapted genetically over the last 10,000 years to be able to drink milk beyond the first couple of years of life. And to be able to do so is actually a huge evolutionary advantage because milk is very calorie dense, it's very complete. You have a cow, you can get milk 365 days a year. It provides an incredible amount of food security for humans 10,000 years ago to be able to have milk and a steady food supply like that. You just look back and there's just tons of different complexities there. What I've discovered over the years is that getting healthy and going from getting increasingly unhealthy and switching around to going to increasingly healthy doesn't require radical changes in your diet. And it doesn't require eating a diet that is totally out of sync with what everybody else is eating. You don't have to go back to wearing a loincloth and live in the middle of nowhere where there's no toxic contaminants in the environment. You don't have to avoid foods that our species have been consuming for 10,000 years. You can do a lot of little things that aren't weird and don't take a lot of time and effort and energy and still make great, great improvements.
What can you do?
The biggest thing that I've come across is making sure that your metabolic rate works correctly. So when we're young, we feel good. We have a tendency to be leaner, more energetic, higher sex drive, better mood when we're younger versus when we're older. We also have lower risks of cancer, heart disease, basically any health problem. Late teens, 20s, that's really when our health peaks.
So we just need to stay young forever.
Well, if you look at why, what happens physically to us as we age, we see that the metabolism falls and we see that we have a lot of health problems that stem from that decline of energy production, because metabolism and metabolic rate is really and truly energy production at the cellular level. And that just gets worse and worse as we age. So metabolism is really central. Anything you can do to increase it or protect it and keep it from declining is very, very powerful. So that's been my focus, and it doesn't really require any kind of crazy dietary restrictions or anything like that to achieve that and get a nice high body temperature, which is a great outwardly indicator of whether your metabolism works correctly or not. And it's actually really simple. Most people are able to get their metabolism going in the right direction in just a matter of days. And it makes a huge significant difference, truly, in a lot of different areas of the body.
So how would you raise your metabolism? How would somebody like my buddy Matt, who's sitting with me right now, he's younger than me. I'm 32, and Matt, you're like, how old?
25.
So look at that. He's younger than me, and I feel like you don't have as high a metabolism as I do. However, I'm not in the best shape either. But there's a gentleman who's younger than me, and he seems to not have as high metabolism as I do. You have all kinds of different body types and structures and stuff, and people that are even young might not have the best metabolism, right?
We know that most body types are set into motion when we're really, really young, even in the womb. We actually have an epidemic of obese 6 to 12-month-old children, and it has nothing to do with any of their, because they haven't exercised enough or they play too many video games. They're only 6 months old. It doesn't have anything to do with that. You can predict a person's weight and body composition pretty well by the time that they're 2 years old, and certainly by the time they're 8 years old.
Why are we having obese children that are that young? Like, if it's not from the video games and everything else, what do you think that's from?
I guess the point I'm trying to make is that somebody being heavier than another person, automatically they assume that they just eat too much and they don't exercise enough. And all that stuff pretty much breaks down when you start looking carefully at that and how that works and how many calories they do actually eat and what their metabolic rate really is and how much exercise and how many calories they really burn. I mean, just for a person who weighs 300 pounds to walk up a flight of stairs, they burn a lot of calories, twice as much as a person who weighs half that, because it's a lot of work carrying around a lot of heavy weight. Anyway, there's just a lot of different ways of looking at it, but there's if you had to pin it on one thing that looks like the most significant is probably our increase in unsaturated fat as a society. To what happened at about 1900, instead of using butter and coconut oil, olive oil, lard, we use all those things for cooking fats. We switched over to using vegetable oils. So we created, shortening made out of vegetable oils instead of animal fat. We created margarine, which is basically butter that we substituted out for real butter. And then we, of course, started using a bunch of soy oil and corn oil in the United States, and that's produced from our two biggest cash crops. And those are the number 1 and number 2 oils consumed in the United States. And when you actually look at the impact this has, these fats, the more that type of fat in a woman's breast milk, for example, the fatter the baby is. The more in the woman's tissues while she's pregnant, the higher the risk the baby has of developing obesity, diabetes, and so forth. And they found this with humans, but they've also found this with animal subjects that they've tested and looked at as well. So that's hugely significant. And perhaps even more significant, we started feeding all these vegetable oils, the soy and corn, and all these different types of foods to our livestock, particularly pigs, chickens, our eggs. Has completely changed the fat in those animals. And the fat in those animals is very inflammatory now, and it suppresses the metabolic rate, and does so very reliably, and there's very clear-cut science that shows that that's exactly how it works. That's definitely one of the big contributing causes in terms of a person's genetic susceptibility. And then, of course, lifestyle factors. One of the biggest risk factors for developing obesity is dieting frequently. The worst thing you can do is starve yourself and try to over-exercise and eat plant food and special K snack bars and all the things that people do. Because what happens is people lose weight short term, and then it causes rebound weight gain that usually surpasses the original weight. So you can go from being overweight to having a serious weight problem just by restricting your diet severely and trying to over-exercise and all the different things that people do. We know that's actually sort of a bad treatment for obesity. And
I mean, the whole thing with like diets, right? Diets are just like short-term things. It's more about a lifestyle, right?
It's about everything, really. It's just a matter of the fact that our bodies have mechanisms that regulate this kind of thing. We don't consciously take in a certain amount of oxygen and breathe out a certain amount of carbon dioxide. There's no decision-making matter in that. And if you decide you're going to hold your breath and not take in any oxygen and go on an oxygen diet, you hyperventilate to compensate for that when you finally can't hold your breath anymore. And that's exactly how diets work. We have mechanisms that control our appetite, our metabolic rates. We have all these hormones that determine where the food that we eat goes, whether it goes into fat tissue or whether it goes into our muscle cells to be used as energy. We have all these systems that decide how the food we eat is allocated. And most people think that it's just completely a matter of choice, that we don't have an accountant inside that monitors these things. But most people stay stable, their weight stays stable for years and even decades at a time without them being aware of how many calories they're burning or how many calories they're eating at all. It's more about tapping in and understanding those mechanisms and working with them, not against them, because you only give the body a desire to increase the fat storage when you start starving it and using a lot of exercise. Exercise is much better to use than diets, but getting more sleep is also really effective as well.
So you definitely support like working out, going to the gym and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I think strength training in particular is pretty good. I wouldn't recommend doing a whole lot of just cardio for calorie burn. If you're in the gym just trying to burn off energy, it's really not any different than starving yourself. But strength training and things that help you cultivate more power actually do lose some weight typically from that, but it's not necessarily because you're burning calories. It's more from how that changes your hormonal environment. you give your body a powerful symbol that says, I need you to take the food you just ate and put it in my muscles. And you start putting food energy into your muscles and not body fat because of the hormonal changes going on. And you have a redirection of where all those calories are allocated that you're eating.
I really agree with you there. I absolutely, when I go to the gym, I just do strength training. I just do weights here and there. And I leave the the walking and all of that to the streets because I live in New York City and I walk a lot. I mean, the average New Yorker walks I don't even know what the statistic is. Do you know, Matt? No?
No, I don't know.
Obviously, it hasn't
Yeah,
worked for me.
several miles a day. I know that.
But you know what? I'm gonna start my own book. I'm gonna write my own book about the subject. Actually, Mr. Stone, and it's gonna be called The New York Diet. Basically, this is it. You eat and drink whatever you like, and you rent an apartment on a 5-story walk up, and that's it. You got to walk up 5 flights of stairs every day, and you have to do it. That's it. Yeah, people hate that though. They right, Matt. They don't even want. They don't want to buy a walk up, right? They want. You have to have an elevator in the building, right? But I lived on a 5-story walk up, and I actually lost an incredible amount of weight. I was probably like 250 when I moved. And Matt, I knew you when I first moved here.
Yeah, you were a pretty big
guy. I was big, and I've lost a lot of weight, right?
Yes.
And that was from living in a 5-story walk-up. I continued to eat anything I wanted to, drink beer every day. That's
the same way.
Right?
I would.
But you don't live in a walk-up, though. See?
No.
That's what it is.
I live in the first floor, so it's like. But I do actually walk around since I've been going to the gym and stop eating all those fast food kind of stuff. I've been drinking a lot of water, 6 meals a day, something small. I'll eat breakfast, something small afterwards, like a little snack. And then for lunchtime, I'll eat like a salad. But it takes time when you're trying to lose weight, so it's pretty hard.
What I would suggest is, buy my book, get rid of your apartment and go get yourself another apartment at a 5-story walk-up. You just recently wrote a book, correct, Mr. Stone?
Eat for Heat.
Eat for Heat.
Out December 1st.
And tell us about that. Tell us about the new book. What's the focus?
Well, I spent all these years researching metabolism, and I developed a sort of a program and strategy for how to raise it. And I recently came across a little bit more of what I consider to be a more precise and more efficient way to do it. And I just basically wrote a short book about that finding. It's very, very effective. It's very quick. It's learning how to basically concentrate your body fluids to increase metabolic rate and learning how to keep it right in the right zone. I mean, certainly you can get to where your body fluids are too concentrated and develop problems from doing that. But a lot of people their body fluids are basically getting washed out all the time, and it's making their temperature, their body temperature actually 1-2 degrees lower than it should be. And it's a pretty quick and easy fix, and it's just been a really fascinating book, and I really enjoy having written something that's so simple. They experience a lot of the benefits of having a higher temperature and having the systems of their body work a lot better, and that's it.
Your body fluids?
Yeah, because you have about 60% of our body is comprised of water, and we hear that repeated a lot. And there's a lot of stuff out there about how great water is and drink such and such amounts every day, blah, blah, blah. Most of that water is inside of our cells, and then we have what's called extracellular fluid, which is the fluid outside of the cells, and so that's all the fluid, and that includes the blood. About 1/5 of the extracellular fluid is the blood. The other 4/5 is just regular extracellular fluid. So when you sweat or you have tears, that salty fluid that comes out, that's kind of what the extracellular fluid is like. If you drank a gallon of water really fast, what happens is you dilute that extracellular fluid, and it has a certain physiological impact. One is that it would make you pee frequently, obviously, but interestingly, it would drop your body temperature significantly as well.
Should you exercise more so that your body deserves the fluid? It's like, I don't know. Like, there has to be a reason to put it into the body in the first place, right? So, I don't know. So, maybe if you go exert yourself, walk around the block, now I deserve some water because my body needs it. I'm thirsty.
The lower your metabolic rate, the poorer your body handles fluids and electrolytes and everything. It just has a hard time handling it and managing it. And that's referred to in the body as osmoregulation. And the lower the metabolic rate gets, the worse that gets. So, for example, if you deal with somebody with an eating disorder, if they drink a glass of water, they might get dizzy and faint because they can't handle a sudden diluting out all that fluid, and it causes them to have serious problems from that. Whereas, you and I could drink a glass of water and we'd hardly notice any difference because our metabolism works a lot better. That's kind of a glimpse at what the basic premise is, but the whole idea is that the fluid in our bodies is more like soup. It's not pure water. And drinking a ton of water, especially if you have a low metabolic rate and a suppressed temperature, it causes a lot of problems. You need to be taking in a combination of food and fluids that approximates that soup that's in your body, or else it can cause some problems. One problem, for example, that a lot of people experience is when you dilute. If you drink too much water or don't eat enough food, or let's say you sit down and eat a bunch of watermelon or something, which really dilutes your extracellular fluid, what happens is the strength of the cell, the barrier, the membrane of the cell, it really depends on that fluid being really salty. And if it's not salty, then water flows freely in and out of the cell. What happens if you dilute that fluid? Then water flows into your cell. The cell swells, and it puts a bunch of pressure on the inside of your skull, and you get a headache. When it becomes more severe, it becomes a migraine. If it becomes even more severe than that, it becomes a seizure. So they can actually trigger seizures in infants by giving them a very, very small amount of water. Something like 40-50% of infants will have a seizure even with something like a half a pint of water. So it's very delicate. And like I said, the lower the metabolic rate, the more severe the symptoms and the more noticeable this becomes. So for somebody with a low metabolic rate that finds this book and applies the principles, it's extremely powerful, and they stop making the same mistakes that they've been making every single day for who knows how long. So that's kind of what the book is about. It's not necessarily a diet book or how to lose weight or eat this, don't eat that. It doesn't have any of that kind of typical diet book garbage in it. It's really, truly something new and different.
We're talking about the book so that people can go out and purchase the book and learn about this and how you can get your fluids in gear. And,
Well, I know it all sounds pretty bizarre. I would say, just for anybody listening to this, if you believe that it's good to pee clear and that you're peeing frequently, peeing clear, having to wake up in the middle of the night to urinate, having strong sudden urges to urinate, if you have headaches and migraines and heart palpitations and all these different kinds of things, anxiety, a lot of different other symptoms, and your hands and feet are freezing and your body temperature is low, this is definitely the book for you. And it will make a radical difference in how you feel.
And then they should go to the website 180 Degree Health.
Yeah, they can go to 180degreehealth.com. I also sell that on Amazon and Lulu, so you can get it on your Nip or your Kindle.
Tell us about anything going on with you in 180 Degree Health, like next year. You know, we're coming up to the new year. The Mayan prophecy is going to be tomorrow, though, so we might not need your book because we might not live.
Read it quick before the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we do survive tomorrow, what are you going to be doing? Do you have anything going on? What are your goals? What sort of work do you plan to focus on? Anything you want listeners to take away from the conversation here?
What this principle that I've just found that I wrote about in Eat for Heat is, it applies to a lot of little health problems that most people don't really understand. So, for example, restless leg syndrome. I've had some really good insights on that because playing around with this general idea, I can turn restless legs on and off really easily, and that is considered to be a disease with an unknown cause and cure that I have some very potentially powerful and important information about, and the physiology of it. I hope to write a little short book about that. I hope to write a little short book about several different things over the coming year, and I'm also having a lot of guest writers come on my site and write some great content, and I would say that those are the two biggest things I got going on. Schedule right now for 2013, if we make it 2013.
Yeah. So when I was getting you on here before, when we were figuring out how to do this, there was mention of you cooking a large meal. What's that about? You're cooking like a really healthy meal or something like that today?
Yeah, I'm cooking for like 10 people tonight. Most of them are kids, and it won't be diet food. I think I'm actually going to try to attempt beef Wellington and some other things. So it should be, there won't be any raw bean sprouts or wheatgrass juice or any of that kind of stuff.
Hamburgers and hot dogs on the grill?
I could do that, but I'm hoping to get a little fancy.
Are you a pretty good cook?
Yeah, I worked in restaurants for a number of years before I started doing a lot of the stuff, and I worked all over the place.
So how did that affect you? I mean, being in the restaurant business, you see what kind of foods are being prepared for people, and you see obese people and stuff like that. I mean, did that affect you? I mean, obviously it did, right?
Well, I worked at a lot of very hoity-toity kind of restaurants that were very expensive. And interestingly, there's a very strong correlation between socioeconomic status and obesity in the United States. The richer people are, generally the leaner they are. Those cooking in places like Aspen, feeding a bunch of food just full of tons of butter and all kinds of sinful things, really, really rich traditional French food to a bunch of skinny people, and working with a bunch of skinny people back in the kitchen as well. So I certainly knew that there was something else, and I was already thinking, man, this eating what you want and eating good quality food shouldn't necessarily make a person obese. It's not making any of these people obese, so why should this be the cause of obesity, eating good food and hanging out, having some drinks, you know? So anyway.
So you were out in Aspen?
Yeah, I spent time in Aspen and Hawaii, Alaska, all over the place.
Man, so how did you like Colorado?
I've always really loved Colorado. I like the mountains. I'm definitely kind of a nature boy. I would say I was a nature geek before I became an official health geek.
But don't those two things really go together?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good combination. But I back in the day, I had kind of an eat less, exercise more approach to health. And, you know, I would go out there and hike really hard and not eat very much food, and was surprised at why I was like practically impotent at 23 years old. That was a good insight.
Wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, doing a lot of physical activity and not eating well, starving yourself basically, causes things to shut down in that department.
Impotence? Is that what you just said? Oh my God, I can't believe that you're so open about that. That's awesome that you like to talk about that. But obviously you fixed the situation, correct?
Well, I put my body through incredibly difficult and trying traumatic things, and gotten to experience and learn a lot from what that does to do that, and helping to keep others from making the same mistakes.
How do you feel about Colorado and their recently passing the recreational use of marijuana?
You know, the town I lived in when I was there, and I left a couple years ago, but I was living there a couple years ago. Small town, so small that there's no Starbucks in town. There's no McDonald's, okay, no Walmart. So 0 Starbucks, but there were 14 medical marijuana dispensaries. It was only a few years ago that they actually started to allow the sale of marijuana if you had a prescription for it. And that just went crazy. I mean, the whole state exploded with this kind of thing.
When did you move from Colorado?
I moved from Colorado a couple years ago.
Where do you live in Florida right now?
I live Gulf Side.
Oh, that's where I'm from.
Just south of Sarasota.
I'm from St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
But no. So getting back to Colorado and stuff and this whole thing, and so you were living there during the medical marijuana dispensary times and stuff, right?
Yeah, and I got to see that firsthand. I mean, it just exploded. It was everywhere.
I got to tell you right now, you know, I just I'll incriminate myself right now. I really don't even care because I believe in the legalization of marijuana wholeheartedly, 100%. And I feel like it's the biggest travesty that it's been prohibited when heroin is basically legal, right? In the state of Florida, it's like legal basically, and and all these other things are legal. I mean, you know, and cocaine is medically, you know, it's not even like a Schedule I drug; it's a Schedule II drug. Right? And you know, when you have like the highest paid lobbyists, those are the drugs that are legal. And marijuana, for whatever reason, I feel like they're gonna, you know, the way the pharmacy companies are, and they push all these different drugs on the American population. It would alleviate a lot of these different things. You know, I feel like some people maybe wouldn't have to take so many prescriptions for all this other stuff. I think the whole, like, you know, it's a gateway drug is just complete and total bullshit, 100%. And that I've seen people get in car accidents or some kind of like hurt their back or something, or even look at all the people coming back with post-traumatic stress disorder from Afghanistan and Iraq, you know, and then they get on these Oxycontins and stuff, and forever they're hooked on like heroin basically, and the government just gives them that stuff, you know. I mean, imagine that. Like, if you're allowed to do that, why can't you smoke pot?
There's no question that if people are seeking relief from pain and suffering that they're having because of some medical condition or otherwise, prescribing a bunch of pharmaceuticals instead of marijuana is obviously about making money for the pharmaceutical companies if we find that marijuana is as effective or more effective with fewer side effects. And most of the things that I've come across suggest that is exactly true. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I have a huge soapbox about marijuana legalization, but certainly it's a little silly that we have this list of drugs that are okay, and then we have this list of drugs that aren't. They don't seem to be based on anything really other than what the culture believes as being good been bad. And of course, the culture is changing to see marijuana a little bit more of a positive light. So it's really only a matter of time before I think that becomes widespread. Colorado's just probably one of the states paving the way here.
Yeah, as long as the social experiment works out.
Yeah,
because
I think it'll be fine. I feel really confident in the citizens of Colorado. Just in general, I think pretty down-to-earth people, pretty balanced-minded compared to a lot of other people in other places that I've spent time in. I feel confident that it will be a success. I know, what's the other state? Is it Washington or Oregon? It's Washington.
Washington.
Right? Yeah, I feel generally about, pretty much the same way about citizens of Washington as well. So yeah. I think they'll be able to make it a success. I'm sure there will be some problems somewhere.
But it's not really about the citizens of those states. It's the federal government allowing them to practice democracy and vote something in.
Right.
Because it has not been adopted federally. It's legal at the state level, but they can still come in at any time and they can bankrupt any kind of dispensary or anything like that. They could take all your money, take all your plants, and then you're gone, just ruin you financially and stuff, So as long as that doesn't happen and they're able to freely live however they like to in a free way that they decided, then yeah, all the other states will eventually, I think, go, oh, that's, that's working out for them, right? That increased revenue and all kinds of stuff, and people are just chilling. I think that has to do with really like the obesity problem too, or actually maybe it wouldn't. Not to get off on a tangent on the legalization of marijuana. I know I do have a soapbox for this. Okay, so I appreciate you bearing with me on that, Matt. Thank you so much for being on today and talking with me on the Bobby Pickles podcast. I really appreciate it. I wholeheartedly do. I agree with everything that you're talking about here. 180 Degree Health. 180degreehealth.com. Go check it out. Matt Stone. He writes about all kinds of nutritional things, a vast research on all kinds of different topics, and his new book, Eat for Heat.